The conversation, I think, was more tied to the equities market. So if the equities market was tanking, they care more about that because maybe their $1 million or $500,000 that they're going to use to move up is usually tied in equities. It's not sitting in cash.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds. No holding on. Hit record.
Oh, we're recording. We're recording.
We're on.
We're on. Okay. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tom Storey Show, recently ranked as the #1 real estate podcast in the world by myself. We appreciate you being back here. And on a serious note, just everyone that's been watching and listening and sending us messages, it's been really cool to get the feedback. And we've got another very exciting guest for you this week. Just before I get into introducing our guests, I want to ask one quick favor from everybody that's been listening to the podcast so far. If you like it, share it with a friend. I think that would be awesome to get in front of more awesome people like you. And if you're watching on the YouTube side of things, all we ask is hit that button. And we are, Steve, I think at over 900 subscribers when this episode comes out.
900.
So if you've been watching and you haven't hit that button, come on, do it. Get us to 1,000.
100 people more to get to the magical land of YouTube real life monetization.
Paying us $3 per video. Yeah, it's going to be magical when we get there.
64 cents an episode. Here it comes.
Okay, into the show. I am very, very excited to introduce Eileen Lasswell. Now, Eileen is someone that I knew about you before maybe we ever spoke, just because I'd see your name across the city. And we got to meet, I think, for the first time in Whistler earlier this year. That's when we got to speak to each other, at least the first time, which was awesome. And looking at you from afar, kind of admiring what you've built is amazing. So I'm really excited that you're here. Just to give a general background, so you've been the #1 team at Chestnut Park in 2020, 2021 for dollar volume and units, and top 1% in the Toronto Real Estate Board from 2018 till now, which is not easy to do. I know how much effort goes behind getting to those type of numbers. So welcome to the show. We're pumped to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
I listen to you guys every Sunday. So, and I have my whole team basically stalking you guys. So, love it.
Goodness.
I learned so much. That's
Hopefully
awesome.
we're providing some type of value and it's not just two knuckleheads like us talking. But okay, so let's
wait. It goes like this. Did everybody listen to that episode this week? Yeah, cool. Don't do that in our business.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
now move on.
I want to get in. Let's start with just the market. You know, you're very active out there. You're speaking with clients on a daily basis, and your business is, I would say, price point wise, more on the higher end of what's happening in Toronto. That's not all you do, but it's a big portion of what you've kind of carved out in our real estate market. How's everyone feeling right now? I guess the conversations you're having with your buyers and your sellers. Interest rates had gone up again on October 26th. It's going to impact people's purchasing power. I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. What's the general, how you feeling? What are you talking to people about?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my buyers aren't necessarily, interest rate sensitive in that they themselves have 50% or more for a down payment. They know where they know that if they're moving for more of a forever home. So they're looking for something really unique, potentially in a very small pocket. So when they find something that meets their criteria, they sort of jump on it and they say, you know what, if the market declines a little bit, so be it. How often does a home like this come out? They're not first-time home buyers. That being said, on some of my higher end listings, what's happening is some of the buyers are excited. They think it's really unique and they love it. But what's happening is that they're saying to me, I don't know that I'm going to be able to sell my house, and therefore I don't want to hold two houses. So it feels like a lot of the market in the over 4 million range right now in Toronto is a bit frozen. I think last week there were 189 homes over $4 million in central Toronto, and there were only 4 that had sold in the past week. So the inventory is really ratcheting up there. But it's not because the buyers aren't out there, and I'm not hearing the interest rates as the comments. I do attend those showings as the listing agent, so we do get instant feedback. But I just wish more of these buyer agents wouldn't be afraid to put in a conditional upon the sale of someone's home. They might be surprised and it might move the market a bit. So I think we as agents have to be a little more creative right now and not be afraid to offend a potential seller.
Do you think that the agents aren't putting that in because they've been so like, that's just not a thing that happens in Toronto for the past decade? This will never work, that they're scared to do it? Or they've never put that condition in an offer before?
I think that's part of it. I think I've heard a lot of agents, they'll call me beforehand and say, should I waste my time? And I'm thinking, I'm here to work for the seller. I'm not here to tell you not to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a waste of time. And frankly, I can't tell you what my seller's willing to accept. So it's never, I think, a waste to put something on paper. It'll either help the seller manage if they continue to see lower offers or offers with conditions. It'll help condition the seller to realize, you know what, the market really has spoken, versus getting no offers and wondering, maybe my agent's not doing the right thing.
Do you guys not get like subject to sale out there? Is that not like a thing?
Not really.
I have never received an offer like that in 11 years.
You've never received a subject to sale offer, or you guys call it condition to sale offer. That is insane to me because it is, I received them all last year. I received them in down markets. I received them in up markets. You just have to know how to use them.
Are they accepted?
Often.
Oh.
They're actually, so here's the way I look at a conditional or subject to sale, we call it here, is if I'm going to accept your offer that you have to sell your home, first of all, it's probably going to have to be a higher price because I have to wait for you to sell your home. So that's great. But here's what it does. Like we normally here, they'll come with a 72-hour clause. We usually negotiate them down to a 24-hour clause. So if we get another offer within that amount of time, we can bounce that offer within 24 hours, right? So what it does though, is the person writing the subject to sale never buys the house, but it shows the next buyer that somebody else has seen value in the home. And so people are really eager, those buyers are really eager to bounce the currently accepted offer. And so the subject to sale will most often sell to not that buyer, but the next buyer. Super useful tool.
And that's just normal in your market. That's been a thing you've always dealt with, Steve?
I wouldn't say it's normal, but 3 or 4 a year.
Interesting.
Right? Not uncommon.
So I've done it on the buy side recently. I think we've had 3 in the past year where we've been able to do that on the buy. And I think part of it is being able to also go through your marketing and your staging plan with the agent who's representing the seller of the property you want to buy. So come prepared. And if they have confidence in you as an agent, maybe they'll push your offer and it'll get accepted. And in all of those cases, we firmed up.
Oh, interesting. So all of them worked out. You were able to sell the property.
They all did.
It all worked out. That's really interesting.
Because you're willing to do a little bit of extra work.
Well, that's it. All right. I wanted to ask you, we had chatted just before we came on about something that I thought was interesting, because I think the general assumption is, okay, interest rates go up and it hurts the average the most. The people that were just about to buy something, the first time home buyer, the maybe move up buyer, it's hurting them on the monthly payment basis. But luxury is luxury, and even in recessions, whether it's watches, purses, luxury, anything luxury, typically that doesn't affect them as much. But you had actually said to me that you saw the high end of the market start slowing down even before what the average sale price would be. Why do you think that was? What were the conversations you were having with other agents around that?
The conversation, I think, was more tied to the equities market. So if the equities market was tanking, which they're, trying to forecast what the interest rates are going to be versus being lagging, they care more about that, because maybe their $1 million or $500,000 that they're going to use to move up is usually tied in equities. It's not sitting in cash, even though maybe it should be. So I did find that there was more talk about the volatility in the market. There was some talk about, I don't need to sell. I represent a lot of sellers. So for me, they were trying to time the market sometimes. And they just would say, oh, I'll push it off, a year. I wanted what my neighbor had in February and March. And February and March in Toronto is not generally the peak of the market. And normally it would be sort of April, May. And so if people were waiting till the leaves were out in, let's say, May, they missed the market. And then they kept saying, oh, I'm going to wait. And so that's sort of what I was seeing on the sell side.
I guess there's a bit of a standoff right now too, right? Between the buyers and the sellers on, well, what is the actual value of the property? Because even the example you gave where 4 properties are selling in a certain price range out of 180 every week, maybe. That's not a lot of data to work with. And especially now, even if interest rates maybe aren't impacting the high end as much as everything else, they're still going to have some type of effect where I know for me looking at comparables for clients, it's like I'm breaking it down like interest rate date here, 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 here. When did sales actually happen after that? And what did that decrease purchasing power to try to come to a conclusion? Because I feel like the rates have gone up so fast. Then first of all, no one even knows exactly the effect they've had because they haven't brought down inflation as much as we were anticipating. So that's why they've continued to go up. And I guess my question to you is, is that becoming very difficult as well to come to a conclusion of a price of a property, talking with your sellers or going over with your buyers when there's not enough data to make a clear, concise of, hey, this is worth this?
This is the first time where I'm now actually discussing listing prices on a continuum based on other properties for sale. So to your point, I'll give them what I think the value is on whatever limited data it is. But having worked in the areas that I service for multiple years, sometimes it's not just what's sold in the last few months. You know the value of a particular home because you can peg its value versus another location just on the other side of the street. It's more using your experience. So I think it's really hard for newer agents to peg that. And in sometimes it's best to ask a colleague at your office to come help you price. There's no shame in asking for help or for leveraging your relationships within the industry. But, we had some listings in Burlington where which is about 45 minutes west of Toronto, for those who don't know. And we have a team member who's based out of there. And it's been interesting. In Toronto, we're still seeing sales, 95%, 98, 99, 100% of ask. But we're not typically seeing 80% of asking. And it's pretty common out in Burlington to see sort of 80 to 85%. And so the different conversation we were having was we also need to price in relation to what's on the market. Because if buyers are used to having a huge amount of wiggle room to negotiate, we're going to have a problem. So it was just a very unique way to price that we haven't had to do that in Toronto.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the best Canadian in-person real estate training seminar that there is. Masters Academy, presented by Richard Robbins International, November 14th and 15th in Northern Toronto. Listeners and viewers of the Tom Storey Show podcast can receive $200 off of their ticket to this exclusive event by using the link in the description right now down below this video. These unique session formats include things like Small Giants, lightning rounds, and even genius interviews with top producing real estate agents from across the country. So if you are a real estate agent anywhere in the country, you need to be at Masters Academy November 14th and 15th in Toronto. I myself will be there. I'm flying in specifically for this event. Both Tom and I will be there in person, and so should you. So register today for Masters Academy 2022 happening November 14th and 15th. That's a 2-day event, both days from 9 until 5 p.m. at the Universal Event Space in Northern Toronto. Sign up right now using the link down below in the description. Save, and now back to the podcast.
And the conversations now with everybody I know are difficult. I want to kind of move this forward into a fun conversation with us three. So I will say that officially you're the most prepared podcast guest we have ever had. It's not surprising to see your success in real estate just the way you prepared for this, because I'm assuming that's how you prepare for everything, which means
Sure.
so it's all coming. It makes sense, right? So I'm giving you a big compliment here because I really mean it. Okay, so as real estate agents, we open doors and walk into weird things all the time. Like the amount of things, like I remember like showing properties for lease in my first year and seeing like stripper poles in condos and being like, what is going on here? Like in the middle of a condo. You had said that you've had some pretty fun experiences in the industry, and I thought that would be a fun conversation to have. Do you want to go there?
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious about which one you're talking about.
So
I'm nervous.
sometimes,
You want a hint?
yeah, I'll give you a hint. So sometimes there's listings that blow up online because there's some interesting feature of it, right? Like I saw one recently where there was like a bat cave beside the house you could go down to, or there's like dolls everywhere or something. And sometimes people that are into other aspects of their life and their private life don't even care about hiding it when they sell a property. So, rooms with swings and ropes and things like that.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I know you had told us that you've had an interesting experience showing a property like that, not expecting it based on the people that lived in that house.
Yeah, it was a really high-end property. It was probably the first year I was licensed, and I was with someone who I had a very professional relationship with. They were not a friend. And the sellers were home. They were a lovely couple in their 70s, and the house was really cool. It was the most expensive home I'd ever shown to a client. And we walked downstairs, and it got to be really cool. It had like velvet walls and shag carpeting, and it had a mirrored bar. And then you get to the back, and there was this peephole, and I thought, what is this? And so you go into the room, and it's a soundproof, white padded room with built-in couches and paraphernalia, like stuff hanging all over the ceiling. Like it was crazy. So it was really interesting. My clients did not buy the house, but I have to say we became very close and had a really good laugh, and they ended up buying something else.
And did you know that going in? Like they didn't put those photos on MLS, right? That was like
I mean, there wasn't even a call the listing agent. Like if I'd been the listing agent, I would have at least prepped the buyer and the buyer's agent to say, just want you to know that, we have some very interesting clients, and P.S. they're going to be there. Like that was the most awkward part, is afterwards we went up and we were like, are they smirking? Like what's going on here? So yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So you didn't walk upstairs and go, hey guys, what do you use that room for downstairs?
No, it was so obvious. So obvious what they used the room for.
I hope everybody's watching this on YouTube right now because Tom's bright red. He doesn't know.
No, this is just how my skin's looking today. Well, when I buy soundproof panels, it's because like I'm a nerd and I want to use them to have better like sound quality on our podcast. I'm not thinking about a sex room, but
yeah, for sure.
Okay. Also, one thing that I kind of joke about a lot is I tell people like, well, if you're lonely, become a real estate agent because your phone will just ring, but it's not from clients that want to buy houses, from people trying to sell you stuff. So it, like literally nonstop, there's like someone, it's like sell the shovel, right? Sell the thing to the industry. That's where all the money is actually made for a lot of businesses. You had also told us that you had someone that basically pulled you away from your family on a weekend to show a property, and their only goal was to try to sell you something. They had no interest in the property. And that was probably a really big learning experience for you in terms of like, not that it's a waste of time, because you never know, it could have been a great opportunity, not for what they were selling you. But I don't think we talk about this enough in the industry. Like the amount of things that are tried to be sold to us with, I don't know what course they're taking or who's teaching them how to use these exact little phrases or whatever, or they send you an email about your website about everything wrong with it. I'm sure you get these emails as well. It's like, what you
every week. Yeah.
Every week. So can you walk me through?
But the funny part is they're wrong. They'll be like, your website has spelling errors, and then they'll list the example, and it's the name of a street, which is spelled correctly. So I'm like, delete. But yeah, so I mean, I really value my family time, because I think a lot of us as agents put our clients first. And so I really try to offer as much as possible. And so I really have a hard time saying no and setting those boundaries. I'm getting better at it, but I do have to attend some of these listings when they're unusual, whether or not they have a bunch of units in them, or maybe, they want me to explain some of the history, et cetera. I try to give people space, but in this one, I actually called the agent. I qualified that they were not a direct sign call. They showed up, and it was a group of 3 people, including the agent, and they were trying to tell me that the house was haunted and that I should sell, and they were trying to sell me this whole saging process to like smoke the home out, and that I should do that in my home as well. And I have never been more angry. They didn't even care about the house. They didn't go through the house. They just spent the time talking to me about that. I was really upset. I spoke to the agent afterwards, and clearly she knew what was going on and she was part of it. And her comment was, well, I've used them and I thought they could help you with your listing. And I thought, oh my God.
I can't
Wait,
believe
guys,
an
in Toronto
agent showed up.
In Toronto, you don't like spirit your houses before listing them? Is that not?
Yeah, it's pre-home inspection, spirit inspection. Yeah, that's one of
just
our main
around
things.
Halloween. Just around Halloween. Yeah. It's crazy.
You had mentioned that a lot of agents, especially when they start, right? Because like when you start your career, you're just so happy to have opportunities that you'll be like, I can meet you there, I can meet you there, and then what happens? Even if you find levels of success, you burn out very quickly. Like it is exhausting. How have you found that? Because I know work-life balance is kind of a bunch of crap. I don't know if there's a perfect way to explain that, but how have you found, because you have grown a very successful business in a relatively short period of time in one of the most, if not the most competitive real estate markets in the world, especially in terms of the price points that you're doing. I guess, like, how have you done it? Like, how are you doing it with kids, with a dog, with a family?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know that I'm winning in that category. I think I agree with you. When you first start out, you work, and I had at least 4, if not 5 years where I was 80 to 100 hours a week, work weeks. It was constant. And looking back, I don't think I would do that again, but that was the choice I made. I didn't know how to not sort of be that perfectionist. Now I'm very lucky. My husband is very supportive. He works more regular hours. Our kids are a little older now. We have we have family and friends to help us. And I have a team now to help me. And I think the longer you're in this business, the more you're okay with saying no. I used to calculate it and be like, oh, I said no, and then they sold, and that was $30,000 I missed out on. I don't think about it that way anymore, because you can't take everything. And sometimes I've learned, actually, there are certain clients, buyers or sellers, that just don't work well with my communication style, with my ethics and values, and I steer clear of them. And I'm not afraid to turn business down because of that. And I think I end up getting more business. So, there's a myth that if you take it all, it's good for you. I actually think that sometimes you take this business and it really bogs you down. It can really bring that energy down. It can really get you thinking negatively. And then as soon as you fire that client, all of a sudden you have all this extra business. And I'm thinking, how did that happen? And it's because you've sort of allowed that extra space in your life to be available.
Yeah, I think, we forget as an industry too, right? Because especially when you get started, or even any coaching you go to or training programs, it's like a lot of the focus is on how to find opportunity, right? How do you consistently generate leads is like the word we use, although they're human beings with heartbeats, right? It's like, but how to find people that are looking to buy or sell property, because that's literally our job, right? And then you work so hard to get that opportunity, and then you get to the opportunity and you're like, I'm not getting a good vibe here, but you work so hard to get there and you feel bad not taking it, especially in a market in which there are many agents I know listening to this or watching this that would love a third of the business that you do. You know what I mean? Where it's tough to give up on things. So did that happen at a certain point of your career, or was that like an early thought process thing for you?
It's just happened in the last 2 years.
Okay.
So, and it was partly because my husband was saying, like, you're missing out on all of this stuff with our kids. Like, you're not available. I was having burnout. I would go on vacation and feel exhausted. I would have one day, I would take 1 out of 7 days. So I would take 1 day off a week, and I would stay in bed all day because I physically couldn't get up. And it was just burnout. And I wasn't doing the things I enjoy. I wasn't going skiing. I wasn't, doing anything that I wanted to do. And I think I was just depressed. You get sick of being in that. And, COVID was also really hard for all of us. I was working like a crazy person, and it was great in terms of it being a really busy time and good time for real estate. But on the other hand, it was a very stressful time for a lot of my clients, and also just having to put in those amount of hours. So I'm reinstituting. I didn't have as many boundaries in COVID And I'm trying to get back to that place where I remember, what am I here for? And what do I enjoy about my job? Is it, just doing the deals and the commission, or is it that I actually enjoy helping people find places and sell places? And what am I doing here? So
Right.
I think once you can answer that, your priorities change. I mean, do you turn stuff down, Tom? Like, are you doing that right now?
Yeah, it's happening a lot. It's interesting. My turning it down is more like, hey, this number you want doesn't exist. I'd be doing you a disservice by listing this property. Why don't you just lease it out? Is essentially what's happening recently for me, where I'm not walking away from a lot of, and because so much of my business is repeat and referral, that most people get it. But yeah, I've absolutely turned down business because I know it's going to cost me, like my cost to get a listing to a market is about $5,500 to get it on MLS. I would assume your cost is higher.
It's about double that.
Okay, yeah. So why don't we go into that? Because I think for the general consumer...
Steve, what about Steve?
Yeah, Steve has questions. Steve, you got a question? Let's go.
There. No,
we're
I
a
feel like
totally
he should
different
answer.
thing here. We're a totally different thing here. Like, I'm probably half of Tom's, but our commissions are also probably half of Tom's, right? Like, our actual hard cost, not including our time, probably about half of that, because we don't do, at the low end, we don't do staging, right? Because, I mean, I know in Ontario, it's a totally different structure, right? Like, we're at best here fighting over 2.5% between the two agents, right? Like, that's kind of where our market it usually is. I was just thinking about when you said, like, the work-life balance thing and saying no to things. I know how I deal with it, and I just did it on Monday because there was 2 listings that we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on with the sellers. So those listings went to, instead of us, they're past clients actually. Instead of us, they chose to list both with area experts. And the way I deal with it is I like to go on and see what happened with those listings. And one of them is 78 days on market, and the other one is terminated 2 days ago. Right. So that makes you feel really good when you're like, listen, I knew I was right on my price and somebody else fed them a line. And now they've gone 3 months, 2 months. One of them was longer than that. And I mean, I feel bad for them, but they were sold the dream by somebody else that they could get X amount of dollars. I'm super glad I didn't take that, because that would have been a painful process, knowing in the back of their mind that they were like, well, I know we went with Steve because we liked him, but this other guy was telling me higher price, and then Steve would eventually sell for less. Well, I'm glad they went through that route personally, not for them, but I'm glad for me that they went through that route, because now they've experienced that wasn't true, right? That number they were given wasn't true.
Do you think they're going to call you? Sorry, do you think they're going to call you back, and are you going to get the listing now?
I'm definitely going to give it a couple of days after, like, it terminated. Like, here's the weird part. It was one of them was live, active when I looked, and then I mentioned it to one of my partners, and then when she looked, it was terminated 2 weeks ago. So it looks to me like the agent handed in the termination 2 weeks after it was actually terminated, right? So we definitely will have follow-up with them to see, because I mean, I don't know if the numbers don't make sense and they don't want to move now, or that particular person that I'm thinking of, they had a really big reason why to move, right? Like, they weren't, it was a very particular reason. I don't think finances would have gotten in the way. So I feel like maybe the listing wasn't, or they weren't educated correctly through the process, right? They're still holding on to February prices. And our market is down $500,000 since February.
Wow.
In detached, right? Or generally?
In detached. Okay. This was a detached home. Yeah. And it gets worse the further you go out in the valley compared to where I am in town.
Well, it's interesting. Some of the terminated listings, 2 of them I've had. So one of them was recently, like, we just, she wasn't motivated and didn't want to sell at that price, so wanted to take it off the market. Was very loyal, told me she would come back to me. She lives in a condo, and she called me and said, it's really interesting. Someone has dropped off an offer. And I said, what do you mean they've dropped off an offer? And she said, they've submitted something with the concierge, and they are telling me that they'll only present the offer if I come down right now in person in the lobby. And I said, interesting. I said, go down. I'm curious to know what agent has done this. And she said, you know what? No, she said, I gave that person your number. I didn't feel right. I hired you. You did all this work. You staged, etc. Anyway, the agent never called me. And so we think it was just a scam because they weren't able to find her information. And so he went in person to try to meet her, to try to get the opportunity to list the place. And then it happened again in a very high price point. And the agent and my seller called me again and said, you know, they're calling me on my home. And she said, we've had 15 calls, even though it's a do not call kind of thing.
Yeah.
Privacy issues. But she said someone came and said they have an offer and dropped off a sample offer without some of the stuff filled in. And I said, God, people are getting so creative and it's so unethical.
It's just missing buyers' names and initials.
Exactly. It was literally missing. It had a price and it had all of the information, but it didn't have any of the buyer's info. It had the agent's info, and that's it.
This is where BC is kind of ahead of things, but it's not. It hasn't come into play yet. So BC eliminated limited dual agency, right? Like we cannot represent the buyer and the seller. So I'm sure many people listening to this know, oh, I have a buyer for your listing or for your type of property is like the agent's number one, door knocking thing. I have buyers. So in BC, if you have buyers, I shouldn't list with you and I can't list with you because I can't sell to your buyers. Right. So it's something that the BC government, even though they put it in place, they did not do a very good job of educating the public that, oh, by the way, there must be 2 real estate agents in every transaction now for buyer protection. Right. And it's something that the market never asked for. The market doesn't want that, but it has now been legislated in. So I try and educate my clients as best I can. When someone says to you, I have a buyer, you can't talk to them anymore. You have to stop talking to them immediately and phone me or someone else other than them.
Mm-hmm. Which is totally different from here. Like doesn't opposite. Exist. Yeah. I want to ask you on the listing. So there was an email sent out by CREA last week on exclusive listings. And I know high-end stuff exclusive. I don't know all the details, so I think you can still absolutely have exclusive listings. I think there needs to be like a box the client checks off now or something. Was there conversation with that within your brokerage because you guys do more high end than maybe the typical agent?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's so basically what they're saying is that they don't want agents to have pocket listings so that they can sell to selective people. They don't want these coming soon signs that last for weeks and then the consumer says, wait a second, that's, why did it sell so quickly? There are a number of reasons why we market exclusively. Some, people say, oh, celebrity, high end. I don't even think it's that necessarily. Of course, that's true, but that's such a small part of the market. I do a lot off market. Our brokerage does a lot off market, and both luxury and non-luxury. And sometimes it's we have a fiduciary duty to our sellers to get them the most money. And sometimes it's not always MLS. Sometimes buyers feel that the home is more exclusive and they'll pay more because they're not competing. They don't want to have to compete. They just want to pay what they want to pay. And we have a good sense of value. They value who buys the home. Just like in a multiple offer, I've had multiple clients choose offers that are lower because they like the buyer better or they like the agent better. Like, it's crazy. I've seen it all throughout the pandemic. I feel like that's one thing. And so I feel where I think I struggle is that a seller should be able to choose how they want to sell their home. And we as agents should be able to choose the tools properly. I do put exclusive signs on my property, and either you let everybody in at the same time, to like double end property. Whoa, something happened there.
Something happened there.
We can still see you.
I didn't touch anything.
Just move. Yeah,
we can still see you. You're just not centered. There you go. You're back.
God. I'm back. So I think there are some agents who float prices exclusively first to see if they can get that price. Sometimes it's not even that. It's that the seller has a completely unrealistic expectation. And as an agent, you want to take the listing, but you want to say to them, look, we'll try it for a week or two on exclusive, but if we don't get any traction, we're going with my price. So it can be a tool to manage your seller. And sometimes you actually get the price, and fantastic. And our jobs are also to mitigate risk for our clients. So profile in terms of how much they're putting down, to how much education they've been given by their client, to a whole bunch of different criteria. And sometimes being on exclusive allows us to vet the buyer a bit better. So there's multiple reasons why. And it's my understanding that if any, nothing's really going to change other than now we can do one-to-one marketing on exclusive. So that potentially means I can call 1,000 agents. So it'll mean that I now have a new assistant who's going to be doing this for me if this is what the rule is. So rather than I can't email blast everyone anymore, but I'm allowed to have individual conversations with agents to let them know it's on exclusive. So I don't actually think that this is going to solve anything for the general public. And at least not in the markets I serve. I don't think a lot of agents are selling exclusively to try to screw the consumer. I don't think it's that at all.
No.
It's I mean, when I read that, it was, okay, we want to eliminate the coming soon thing, because some agents are putting out coming soon, not allowing other agents to view the property, and then getting their own showings of their own buyers kind of in advance and trying to double end it in advance, pocket listing, like you said, right? Now, that's, I think, what they're trying to eliminate. Exclusive listings, I didn't get the impression that was what they were trying to get rid of, because there's lots of off market. Well, we shouldn't even call it off market. We should call it exclusive, because it is not on MLS, but MLS is not the only market, right? Like, we need to maybe try and define those things, because most people don't understand that there is a way to sell your home with not going on MLS. The general public does not understand that at all. They think the only homes that are available are the ones that are currently on the market. So obviously exclusive is a very good way to market certain properties. Like I said, if you're a celebrity, if you get a $10 million home, I almost don't want that thing on MLS, because I don't want random agents with unqualified buyers booking showings.
Would it
Right?
also
You need
be
qualified people?
If you
You
want
can't
to
even
try
say
a
no.
price?
That's the problem.
If you want to try a price, you'd rather have it not MLS, so then it doesn't show sitting for 70 days at that price, right? That would, I would assume, would be something that a seller would like that to their advantage, right?
It's something. I mean, I will say that selling exclusively is a lot more difficult than selling on MLS. So if we look at our industry, and I don't even know how many agents are in Toronto, so maybe it is on the one hand, it standardizes things a little bit, because if you end up trying to sell your home exclusively with an agent who has done, 10 deals in their career, you're going to have a problem. So not everyone knows how to do that. And, also getting the buyers to move forward on exclusive, there's not as much urgency sometimes. So it is a different type of sales technique. But, I think as our industry changes, I'm open to the change. So is my brokerage. I think, we're all open to that. It's just, I think we need to understand why, and does this actually solve the problem? That's my concern.
I get so frustrated, because everything is always how fair things have to be, right? That's the way our industry is going. This isn't fair. That isn't fair. And there needs to be a line divided between what is fair and what is the owner's choice, right? So, for instance, if you're in a multiple offer situation and someone lies to you about that, as a listing agent, for example, lies to you about that as the buyer's agent, that is not fair. And that is wrong and should be illegal. However, the way I choose to market my home as a seller shouldn't, in the thought that this is fair or not fair, listen, this is my money, my investment. We shouldn't necessarily be cracking down on every single thing you need to do. For instance, here in BC, we have just made it illegal to accept an unconditional offer, right? Like, you can't do it anymore. There is a buyer's right of rescission now, no matter what, if you sell your property on MLS or privately. So
that's January next year that comes in, or that's in now?
January 1st. Yeah. So you are now saying that this owner doesn't have the right over their property to sell it in the manner of which they choose. And that is the issue for me, right? To say, okay, we're going to take away the way you think is the right way to do things. Now, there's the big difference between if it's done ethically, obviously, we all want to be treated fairly. But to just go, you know what, we're going to try and manipulate the market by changing the way we do business. So like you say, you can't reject a showing. If somebody wants to come in and you know full well they're just viewing $10 million homes and they can't, and they're have no business owning property or have no money to their name, it's not like you can say like, no, sorry, we don't appreciate you, you're not coming, right? Like, you have to be able to, you are hired by the seller to get the most qualified buyers into that home, and I would believe the seller would agree with you. However, if somebody wants to come and get into your listing and try and sell you de-ghoster, what do?
You do it. You say yes. Great opportunity.
Yeah, right?
Maybe if I'd done it, the house would be
you would have sold the listing
know.
if it just didn't have any damn ghosts in it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're at. Yeah. So the fairness thing drives me so crazy, because yes, we have to put things in place where people are ethical and they're doing things by the laws. But just because you want to buy my house and you can't buy my house doesn't mean I have to sell you my house. Right? Drives me absolutely crazy. Nanny state that we live in.
Steve with the hot takes.
Tell me how you really feel, Steve. You're a jerk.
There is one thing that all three of us have in common.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Lendlord. If you've not heard of Lendlord, it is a software platform designed for real estate investors. It helps you easily track your portfolio and get reminders when things like rent and utility payments are due. But the best feature, and my most favorite feature of the entire platform, is something called a deal analyzer. This is where you, as a real estate investor, can log into the software, plug in your future potential purchase, and the system quickly comes up with important information like cap rate, cash on cash return, and even future potential values. It's a totally free software, but listeners of the Tom Storey Show can get 90 days of the upgraded paid version right now totally for free by either clicking the link down below in the description or going to lendlord.io/tomshow. And if you're a real estate agent and you're not using this software to quickly and efficiently analyze deals for your clients, well, I think you're doing your clients a disservice. Download Lendlord today for a quick and easy way for you to analyze not only your own future purchases, but those of your clients. So again, that's lendlord.io/Tom Show to sign up right now, and listeners of the Tom Storey Show receive 90 days of the paid version totally for free. I have tried this software myself. I think it's fantastic and extremely useful as a real estate investor. Sign up today. That's lendlord.io/Tom Show. And now back to the podcast.
There is one thing that all three of us have in common, and it is that in some capacity we all work with family. My mom works with me, which has been amazing. And I was a little nervous at the beginning, but it's been an amazing, different, in the office, she is her name, not mom, obviously. Steve's wife is now doing some back end for them and basically running the show. Steve's just the talking bobbly head, right? And I know you had mentioned that you work with family as well. So what's that experience been like? Was it always that way or more recently? And because it's a difficult thing to do.
For sure. So I work with my sister, who is a few years younger than I am. We were close growing up, but we always had sort of an interesting dynamic. I was the older sister. She was the young one who always tried to ting along, and but we were also very different. So I didn't feel like we fought a lot, but yeah. So I would say we're close. We do live in different cities. She lives in Burlington. I live in Toronto, and I would say I have a much more difficult time with work-life balance, and she sets very clear boundaries and has, she's got 3 young kids. And for me, it's been great. I think it's been more difficult, recently on her because I'm pushing her, and, it's a little bit outside of her comfort zone. I have high expectations, and it's more than just family. It's trying to push someone on my team to be at their full potential because I think she's incredible. I think at the beginning, she fully understood. My family used to be completely unsupportive, I would say, of what I do. And I would say that's still somewhat the case. They don't agree with maybe how much I work, what I do. So it was always a point of contention, and no one could understand. They would just say, oh, why don't you just do a couple showings? Like, what's the issue here? What agents really do? And even my general clients don't understand what we do. Like, I have a full 9 to 5 job managing our team, doing all the back end, doing all of that. And then on top of that, I have client management and showings and all of the other stuff. So you could easily work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you wanted, if we were all robots. So I think, my sister, she had more appreciation at the beginning, the first 6 months, realizing, wow, Eileen just doesn't, it's
Open
not
doors.
like it's actually a difficult job. And I think now that she's having some success of her own, it's trying to figure out that work-life balance and how do you turn that off, even though she's really good with the boundaries, and how do I respect those boundaries? Because I typically push a little harder on her because I know her versus someone on my team. Like, what is she going to do? She's going to go work for another team. Like, that'll be awkward at Christmas. So
I've heard of that happening, by the way. Like, I know lots of
Yeah.
agents who have siblings that are not on their team for whatever reason. And,
Right.
family is obviously an interesting conversation with everybody. As we go more into the team, so I want to get a sense of, you've built out a team structure. You're by no means a mega team, but it's like a good collective group of people, an all-woman team. When did you mean to do that? Was that a calculated decision? How did that play out? And then what's the current, what are the roles of the people on your team currently?
Yeah. So I started as more of an overflow team, meaning I had business that I couldn't manage myself in the hours that I could work. I wanted to offer really great service for my clients. So I started to work with a woman named Catherine, who was incredible. We'd done a deal together in the past, and I was really impressed with her. We seemed to click personally, and we kept in touch over the course of sort of a year. And then she came over to Chestnut Park and partnered with me, and she's been incredible. She got pregnant, wanted to take some time to have her daughter. And so during that time, I was at a wedding and ran into an agent who, Alex, and her mother, Anne, and father, Jerry. So we did have a man on the team. And we had worked at a different brokerage together for a number of years. So I had complete respect for them. And it sort of seemed, it just happened kind of by chance that we were at this tiny wedding, and the next week we joined forces, and then Jerry retired, and then we've been growing since then. So I have an operations manager who just joined me. She's incredible. She kind of keeps everyone in line because my strength is not HR. I still want to sell and be client facing. So I need to offer that sort of aspect and that professional development and the oversight to the rest of our team. So she's fantastic in helping me implement systems and audit the process and just make me more efficient. Then I have a licensed assistant, Katie, who's incredible. She's my right-hand person. And then we have an unlicensed assistant who helps with everything paperwork related. And then I have a couple of other agents. So altogether, there are 10 women full-time on my team. And then we have a couple of part-time people who help on the listing prep side. So on the staging and house prep, that kind of thing. It's happened to be women. And so now we're very proud of it.
Yeah.
But it's not a requirement, and it wasn't a requirement. But it's just been something that's kind of organically happened.
From the initial kind of coming together of the initial when the team was formed to now, how are you attracting, are you actively looking for building to this point? Because I know you're at a point now you probably don't want to add unless it's like an opportunity you can't turn down. How did you find those people? Because I think a lot of agents I talk to are like, I'd love to do something here, but I can't find the right people. And I'm like, well, you're not attracting.
100%.
Yeah, that's
100%. I'm not attracting the right. No, I'm just kidding.
So how have you found the people that have worked so well? Because you see a lot of teams kind of come and go, and faces change, and there's rotation. But like you look at the people that have stability and people are there for a while and less turnover, and it's rare. So have you found these people?
Yeah, I haven't had any turnover on the agent side of the business, because I only will work with people who I have worked with, meaning I've done deals with, I know for more than a couple of years, And then there was one agent who more recently came on. I hadn't known her very long, but we did a few deals where we co-listed a few things while she was still at her other brokerage. We wanted to see how our flow was. So I wanted to test her out without her having to commit to my team either. And she wanted to make sure I was the right fit and that we're the right culture for her too. So it's really easy to say that you're supportive and all of this, and then in reality, you're not. So I think with agents, it's a very different process. On the admin side, I don't have a magic bullet. I've had just as much turnover as everybody else. So for anyone who says they don't, it's impossible. It's really hard because you hire an experienced agent, who doesn't want to be an agent and wants a salary, then they work for you, and then they think, wait a second, I want to go back to being an agent. Like, that looked better. Now I have the tools. You have other people who don't know the industry, and then they join in and you train them, and then they're like, well, you've taught me how to do this. Now I'm ready to learn something new. And I'm thinking, well, it's not my job to train. It's my job to train you for the job, but I'm not supposed to train you for the industry. If I need you to do feature sheets every single week, that's what you're going to be doing. Oh. And so, there's turnover from that. I'm hoping we have sort of a stable group now. I'm not looking to grow. I'm not a broker. I'm not a mini brokerage. I work at Chestnut Park, and I'm proud of it. I have no interest in bringing other agents onto my team at this point. I do get constant contacts from LinkedIn, from Instagram, probably a couple every week, asking, probably because you guys tell everyone to join a team. So they're all asking, are you looking to grow your team?
Here's the difference, though. I think when people are looking, because I just had one yesterday reach out, from something I posted actually ages ago, like, hey, is this opportunity still available? I don't think those people understand how much work gets done for no money in this industry, right? So as a new agent coming on, they're just like, oh, well, Tom's team sells, X amount of homes, 100, 200 homes a year, whatever it is. That means for sure they've got 30 or 40 they can give me, right? And it's not that way at all. Tom even has a pretty good structure where when he has someone join on, like, okay, guess what? The first thing you're going to learn is leases. And then you go through those steps, and you have to build up from the bottom. You have to build up from knowing nothing, or at least being able to accept nothing. And that's the trouble that I see with people that have failed out in the business, but they still manage to do those 2 deals a year, 3 deals a year, is then they come in and go, well, for the first 2 years, this is what I was making when I was doing nothing. And it's like, yeah, because you have to learn how to become the person that can create the business and also how to do the deals. And they're just not willing to do what it takes in order to put yourself in a position to succeed. They're just not there. And it is frustrating. I know there's a ton of great people out there that do that, but then they end up being you guys, right? And it's really tough. Wow. It's really, really tough to build a team that ends up staying together long term.
Yeah. I have a sort of a litmus test when I'm speaking with someone. In my opinion, you should get 1/3 of your business should come from your own database, like if you're a team member. So your referral network, your client, your family, etc. 1/3 of it should come from opportunities given to you from your team. And then 1/3 of it is going to come from your hard work and cold calling or whatever sort of system you want to use, whether or not it's door knocking or farming or, Insta or YouTube leads. However you want to pursue that 3rd column is up to you as an agent. And your team should give you some guidance on that and some support and tools, but it's still on the agent. And so when I'm looking at that, I feel like I'm responsible for 1/3. And if I'm looking at someone and I'm asking them, okay, what is your kind of target commission? What do you want to do? How much are you working a week? What are you prepared to change? And if I'm not hearing things that they're going to make some significant changes, if they think that they can, work part-time or only work for a few hours a week or a day, it's just not going to work. There's no easy solution. We do get paid, a lot per transaction. And yes, we work really hard to get there. And there are some that we win and some that we lose. And so you have to invest in each listing. But if it was that easy, everyone would do it. And that's why we have so few agents that last more than 2 years.
So what does someone do right now? Like if they're, there's always the question, Tom's going to say join a team. But like, let's say, for instance, they do join a team.
Mm-hmm.
What does their 40 hours minimum right now look like? What are they doing if they have no business?
I think it depends on the team you join. There are some teams I know when we go to these conferences and that will have their team cold calling or calling leads from 9 to 11:30 Monday to Friday. I've heard of other teams where they are door knocking from 9 to 11 every day. And but I think the key denominator is it's consistent. And each team will have a different philosophy about what you should do. Maybe you need to get better at your Instagram and your YouTube, like you guys chat about, or maybe you just need to have more conversations. Maybe you need to be entertaining more if that's where you think you are, going to thrive. That's really how I built my business, was really on networking and, working really hard. I was mentored by an incredible agent, and I started on her team and helped or learn the inside kind of the ropes from that. And then I left when I didn't have any time to sort of service the team and I needed to just focus on my own business. But I would never have gotten to where I am now without her.
That's interesting, right? Because you basically just explained that like mentorship is so important, but then every team leader's worst nightmare is they mentor someone for 4 years and then they go off without them. You know what I mean? Like it's funny, right? So it's like this mix. Like I don't know what the answer is.
I don't think that's a nightmare, Tom. I think that is the dream, right? I think if you mentor someone and you can get them to a spot where they can then in 4 or 5 years from now go off and do it on their own, I think that's what every team leader should be aspiring to do, because that means you did something good, as opposed to the people that unfortunately fail out, right? Like obviously you want to build your team and stay with them forever if they're good people and everybody works well together. But at some point in time, isn't it awesome to know like, oh, this person's going to go do it on their own and they're going to be now adding to the professionalism in the industry, which we all know needs it.
And I would say we didn't have a falling out. We're still friends. Yeah. She was happy for me. And I know that while I haven't had any turnover on the agent side, I would be happy for the people on my team if they felt that they could get enough business on their own and wanted to. I'm on Steve's book there, especially because that they're not leaving disgruntled, and everyone, if they can find a better source of revenue to fill that bucket, then do it. But I also know that, based on all the people who contact me, that I might not find someone who I enjoy spending time with as much. But there are solutions out there if that were ever to happen. So I hope it doesn't. I really am close with everyone I work with. But if it does, then I'll be happy for their success. I mean, I structure my teams differently than a typical team too. So I think I incentivize people to stay longer than they would on a traditional team structure. I don't take as big a cut as some of the other teams do. So, but that's also because I don't offer as much service potentially as some of these big teams do to my actual agents. So there's a trade-off. And I think the people on my team recognize that. I hope they do when they watch this podcast.
The question that I get a lot from agents that are like had a team that didn't work out very well, and potentially it's because they were such a good salesperson but not a good manager, and that doesn't mean you're not an amazing person. It's just some people's personalities are different, right? Because that's a different job. It's a completely different job to manage people versus just being a good salesperson. And they're so scared at, well, if I build out a team and have a few other agents that are helping me with my business, well, what if they create a great relationship with that client and then they leave me? I'm like, you don't own relationships. Like there's nothing you can do about that. And again, I've never had turnover in my team, so I haven't had to experience that, right? But I'm sure some people, if you're a team leader and you've given all your opportunity to a few people, and you're like, that's your fault if you're not staying in touch after the fact. And that's your fault if you're not part of the equation. That's just because you're not opening the door for them doesn't mean you're not part of the entire experience and making sure that you're showing your face. But just my opinion on that, right? Like a lot of people are terrified of, well, what if that happens?
Well, I think there are two things. You can build a better contract. I can happy to share you what I've got there. But on the other hand, too, if that's the mentality of the team leader, then that might not be the team you want to join, because the more you share, the better it will be, and your business will grow from that. And I think that for me, when you do these personality tests, I have like a 10 out of 10 on drive and 10 out of 10 on competitiveness, and that's maybe not typical. That's probably not the profile you'd want in a team member, but that's something I know if I were to take someone on. So, but
It is strange
it is what
how
it
like
is.
we're not supposed to profile people, but personality test is how I hire. Personality test tells me everything, because there are some personalities that, trust me, you are going to hate me as your boss.
Oh, I believe you.
That's actually probably most people. But like if I hire you and you're a certain personality type, if for instance, if you're my personality type, you will hate me. I would hate myself.
So
Right.
what
So
are
that
you,
is so.
Steve? Are you a color? Like, how do you do your
Oh,
personality
if you go by the
test?
color, yeah, if you go by the color, kind of Richard Robbins, Doug Bulger thing,
Yeah,
I was gold green, now I'm green gold. So
that's what I am.
if if I hired
Me too.
if I hired another, yeah, if
We're
I
all
hired
green golds.
another,
That's hilarious.
so I have to know. Now this means nothing to anybody that's not, hasn't taken those courses, but if I hire anybody other than blues and golds, I'm screwed. Right? Because green personality types, everybody here on this call, the number one thing of a green personality type is they believe they are the smartest person in the room no matter what. Right? They do. And
Oh God.
you can't have an employee in my position. You can't have I cannot work with that person, because I can't have them second guessing where I think the business should go. Right? So that's an example of hiring out of the personality profiles.
I think, just for a listener that doesn't know what we're talking about, all three of us, I would say, are direct, analytical, and organized. That's probably a good way to put it. I don't have a whole lot of emotions running through my body. It's once in a while, but not normally. Like, it's like, this is an issue. Okay, here's how we solve it. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Why are you worried about it? Let's just do this. Where other personality types are much better with people, face-to-face conversations and emotions, and you've lived in this house for 30 years and this is so great, and who do you want to sell it to? Is it someone in your position, right? So it's like, you got to be great as an agent to adapt to who you're talking to. I think that's a quality of a lot of top realtors, is you can adapt, and you don't necessarily want to like fight your personality on them. But yeah, when you're building out a team structure, and it's also a good way to know like clients you're going to jive with or not, right? And especially if you're connecting your clients with other team members of yours, like based on personality type, makes more sense than some random automated system that says you work with this person, because that's not very helpful.
And you know
It's funny
why people
though.
end up sorry, go ahead. I got a thought. I'm going to write it down. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's funny though. A lot of agents who become agents say, "Oh, I love people. I'm a people person," and that's the last person I'm hiring on my team, because I think, no,
Because they're a
seriously,
liar.
no, because that's not a successful agent. You're around people
Yeah.
all the time, but I think the most important trait is to be super organized, to be driven, to be a hard worker, and you do have to be really smart. So to me, intelligence is a key thing. And yes, you do need to connect, and it's hard because clients are going through the most stressful time or emotional time, whether or not it's a divorce or it's a financial situation. You have to. I don't try to be someone's therapist, but they do share with you things that they would never share with someone who's not their spouse or family member. So if you get too bogged down on that, you forget what your role is, and the role is to help them get the house for the best price, to meet their goals, to sell the house at the best price, to mitigate risk, to do all of these things, and to do it in an ethical manner. And so I think these personality types are interesting, but I see a lot of team leaders really are greens and golds, because you need to have processes in place to scale. And then you need to be able to have a big vision, and to be able to put things together and to problem solve, so that you know when to grow and who to add and what puzzle is missing. And my operations manager is a people person. She is a really good listener, whereas I'll pick up the phone on a Monday and get right into it, and I'll forget about the social graces of how was your weekend or your kids, and like, It's not that I
My
don't
number
care.
one
It's that
downfall. Yeah.
it's not that I don't care. It's that I don't have time. And to me, I calculate everything based on time when I'm work focused. And there's a time and a place for that social aspect on my team.
As we wrap this up, this has been such a fun conversation. By the way, will you come back? Because I know we have even more I want to talk to you about in the future.
If you want me back.
Yeah. No,
sure.
this has been great.
Sure.
So I think one thing that a lot of real estate agents struggle with is just like this term success, and success can be based on how much time you spend with your family, how much money you make. But the reality is, if you continuously hit your goals year after year, I will promise you the carrot will always get bigger. There'll always be something to do, and it can sometimes actually like be very stressful on you. And I had a day like this personally where like I was like supposed to go out for dinner. I was like, I need to get in bed at 7 p.m. tonight because I'm stressed the hell out. Even though financially and business wise and client, I felt like I was doing great things. Right. So, but it took me a long time to get to the point that I felt somewhat comfortable, or at least in the driver's seat in this industry. For you, did you find that right away, or did it take some time to feel that out in the comfort side of things?
Yeah. I don't know how to define success, right? You'll define it one way one year, you'll hit that success, you'll hit that goal. And then the following year, success means something different. So the answer is I'm still working on it. I think when you don't have direction or what your goal is, whether or not it's personal or professional, that it's becoming challenging. So when you hit the goals you need, what do you do next? And I'm sort of in that stage now where I'm trying to figure out what is it that I actually want to do. And I don't think it's grow every single year and do, because it comes at a sacrifice. And to your point, there are nights where it is so stressful. I have not slept the last 3 nights. I am dreaming about work. There are issues coming up left, right, and center that are beyond our control.
Yeah.
And the more deals and the more volume, the more agents who work with you that you are doing, the more volume is the more problem, the more headache. And so it then becomes, it's just a numbers game. And so can you do fewer deals and earn less money and have a better quality of life? Yes, but how do you turn off that competitive side, that drive? And that's not an easy answer. And that's part of the reason why I'm in coaching, is to really help me hone back some of that and remember why I got into real estate, which is that I really felt that real estate was lacking some of the analysis, some of the professionalism that I wanted to bring to it, some structure, the processes. I just feel like I wanted to change that. And I love learning. I love doing new things every year, implementing things. But how does that translate into an actually a successful life? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
If anyone listening knows, if you could let us all know, I think that would be
Put it in
great.
the comments.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. I'm sure someone on YouTube knows the answer to success. Like, just let us know. Okay, so I get how busy you are. I thank you for being here. We'll wrap this up. I think this has been an awesome conversation. I always like to wrap every episode with like final words of wisdom, and usually I just skip Steve when there's a guest because
I have one written down this time.
Okay, fine, say it.
Okay, my final thought was just like when we were talking about team leaders and that and personality types, the downfall of team leaders in our industry is that they are the orange personality type. I know you're all going to hate me if anybody's listening to this right now, but they are the best salespeople and the worst leaders. So, and not because they're terrible people, but they just, leadership is usually based in consistency. Whether or not you're consistently a terrible person, you may find people that want to work for you. You consistently a nice person, whatever it is. And orange people don't have that. They are, however, the absolute best salespeople. So that is the downside to being the most successful agents. Usually, is you have enough business to grow into being that team leader, and then you're really bad at it after.
And they're typically the people whose desks are extremely messy, but they're also the most fun at the party. And they're not always necessarily loud, but a little bit louder than other personality types.
Can
Eileen,
I show you my desk right now? This is fun.
Please.
This is actually really funny.
Yeah.
I have thousands of Sports Illustrated. I'm not kidding. Thousands of Sports Illustrated vintage. So if there's anyone here that wants some vintage,
there we
what
go.
do we have here? Jimmy Connors.
Oh, whoa.
We're going through it all. So yeah, So I'm completely disorganized. So I don't know what that says about me, but not actually in my real professional life, but certainly on my desk right now.
Fair enough. Well, we'll wrap up the show. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for everybody that's listening. Eileen, if people want to reach out to you or find you or just learn a little bit more about you, where's the best place for them to go?
I think just Instagram, go to Eileen Lasswell.
Amazing.
That's it.
Well, thanks for listening or watching another episode of the show. We will be back next week with a big time guest. In fact, it's a CEO of one of the biggest real estate associations in North America. And we've got some tough questions. So we're excited for that one. Steve doesn't even still know what's going on yet.
No idea who this person is.
We'll find it out soon. Eileen, I'll tell you offline who it is. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, everybody, and have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Steve.